Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you so much for joining our America After 3 p.m. special report release, Promoting Healthy Futures. My name is Tiara Easter, and I'm the webinar coordinator for the Afterschool Alliance. We're so happy that you chose to join us as we discuss how after-school programs help support children's healthy development. First, a few housekeeping notes. This webinar is recorded and will be sent out to all participants along with the slides and resources you see here today. We love to hear from you. So if you have questions or comments, use the chat function to interact with presenters and other participants, but please make sure that your chat is set to everyone. And with that, I'd like to introduce Jody Grant, Executive Director of the Afterschool Alliance, to get us started today. Hi, Jody.
Thank you so much, Tiara, and welcome everyone. Depending where you are, good afternoon, good noon, or good morning. Today, we are going to focus on a topic that is top of mind for all of us, our kids' well-being. Medical experts from the Surgeon General to the CDC have warned us that rates of anxiety, depression, and sadness among America's youth are at alarming levels. This was a concern prior to the pandemic, and it's only gotten worse. Children and youth need the kind of support that after-school programs provide now more than ever. With our fabulous group of panelists today, we're going to explore what young people and families are experiencing, what we're seeing in after-school programs, and how programs are responding to the needs of children and youth. I'm going to share data from our America After 3 p.m. survey. This was a survey of more than 31,000 parents, and it was taken just before the pandemic. It showed that even before the pandemic, parents value after-school programs because they provide opportunities for our kids to connect socially, feel safe and supported, and build life skills. A little bit of the information on this next slide. So this is again from our America After 3 survey. And what you can see, which is really obvious, is that parents support after-school programs and truly believe they're meeting the needs of their kids. They're more likely to agree that after-school programs are a place where young people are able to engage with peers, caring adults, and mentors, be active, and have access to a variety of healthy snacks and meals. Second slide, please. And the great news is that after-school programs are providing what parents need. Most parents with the child in an after-school program report their after-school program is helping their child build social skills, build confidence, and decision-making skills. Kids' well-being and healthy development is paramount. So I am so glad we're all able to spend some time today on an issue that is absolutely essential to ensuring that our young people have the supports they need for a healthy future. So on that note, I am pleased and honored to turn this over to Kamara Thompson, our moderator and founder of TEC LLC, Be Human, to start off our conversation. Kamara?
Oh, thank you so much for that introduction, and I'm so excited to have everyone here. Just a few words about some of the work that we're doing at Thompson Education and Consulting, TEC LLC, Be Human. We have been working with after-school programs across the country, providing coaching, feedback, and tailored curriculum for positive behavior support frameworks, conflict resolution, town halls, circles, meditation, and mediation, which is so important when we're thinking about educating the whole child and really thinking about the social emotional health and wellness of our students. I'm so delighted that we have people with a range of experience on our panel today. In addition to Jody Grant, we have 3 after-school providers: Kenny Riley, Director of Out-of-School Time Programs at the Carol Robertson Center for Learning in Chicago, Illinois; Jen Smith, Program Coordinator for the Center for Community Health Advancement, Marshfield Clinic Health System in Marshfield, Wisconsin. We're also very fortunate to have Noah Shaw, a 14-year-old student at the Miller Family Boys and Girls Club after-school program in Murray, Utah. Noah is also a youth ambassador for the After-School Alliance. And finally, we're delighted to have Melissa Johnson with us. Melissa is the parent of a 7th grade daughter who attends the New Horizons of North Texas after-school program in Fort Worth, Texas. Welcome, everyone. The impact of the pandemic on young people has been alarming in many ways. The isolation and loss have had profound consequences. In December, the U.S. Surgeon General issued a sobering warning about the mental health of America's youth, warning that rates of anxiety, depression, and sadness rose dramatically during the pandemic. The CDC warned last week that 1 in 5 high schoolers have contemplated suicide. Kenny, are you seeing signs of stress among your students and their families? Are there differences now in terms of what young people and their parents need from programs compared to before the pandemic?
Thank you, Kumara. This is definitely something that we're seeing in our program. So at Carol Robertson Center for Learning, we run we have 6 after school and summer camp locations. 3 of them are within our own centers, and then 3 are embedded inside of Chicago public schools. And at all of our sites, we've definitely seen an increase in student kind of difficulties with being able to deal with some of the conflicts and some of the issues in their life. We have at one of our locations, we actually have 2 young girls who lost their mother because of the pandemic. We have a lot of our other students have also lost a loved one. The areas that we are serving are some of the hardest hit here in Chicago for the COVID-19. And we have also seen a lot of disruption to children's lives in other ways. So coming out of the pandemic, there's been a lot of our families have had to transition from their housing. Some have struggled to maintain the place where they were living. We've tried our best to help them to get assistance through the city of Chicago and through other partner organizations to help them to stay in their homes, but some have not been able to. We've also had families who have struggled with violence in the home and had to move. So there's been just a lot more transitions for a lot of our students, very difficult and challenging transitions, and where our after school programs are trying as best we can to kind of connect the families to resources, and we're trying to find even more funds to be able to have dedicated family support specialists that can help our families with a lot of those issues. In the programming, we're trying our best to keep the space safe and exciting. And so we try to keep the engagement up, but I would say that overall, there is this kind of just this mood of melancholy that we've been seeing, and some more intensive behaviors as well, that we've had to reach out to our mental health advisor to connect with individual students who were expressing kind of deep sadness or deep anxieties.
Great, that brings us to our next question for Noah. Noah, do you think being in an after-school program helped you during the pandemic?
Yes, I do, definitely. Just with the support being within my program, it was just great to be around it, it was just the fact of having somebody there during the pandemic, not necessarily having somebody active in my life and working in my life, or with the other students that I've seen in my program. It wasn't necessarily them being active and them helping us no matter what. It was them being there and them being persistent and them being caring for us. And it was just great to have a helping hand there.
Can you tell us a little bit more about what you are seeing amongst your peers?
At the beginning of the pandemic, it was a big thing. A lot of my peers were scared of the virus and had a bunch of different opinions on it. But I think just being at club, I saw a lot of different qualities change within my peers. Like, it went from some students being really quiet and being really introverted to learning how to talk to people and being very extroverted, which that has happened to me within my program, not during the pandemic, of course, but before that. And it was just great to see some of my peers, open up and knowing that there's somebody there that cares for them.
Great, thanks so much, Noah.
Yeah.
So Melissa, can you tell us how your daughter fared during the pandemic? Did you have any concerns about her social connections and or emotional well-being? Do you think being in a program helped your daughter during the pandemic?
Sorry about that. Yes, I did. You know, during the pandemic, she was going from elementary to middle school, just making friends, and all of a sudden, you know, everyone's home during the pandemic. I was lucky enough to be able to work at home. But it did take a mental toll on her, just being away from her friends and just being isolated. And you know, I tried to give her as much attention, but again, I'm working from home. The good thing about the after school program, they did reach out to her to check on her, to make sure that she was doing okay. And you know, it was a really good program as far as her, you know, making friends once she got back into it. And now she's back to her norm. I believe during the pandemic, because she was so isolated, she got used to being isolated. So it was very hard for her to open up. But once she, you know, got back into the rhythm of things and got back into the program, she was back to her normal self.
Great, thank you, Melissa. Now we'd like to focus on how programs are responding and what they are doing to help. Jen, could you describe what the Marshall Field Clinic Health System is doing to help programs looking to support young people's mental health, and what tools and resources you recommend?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much. I'd like to start by just sharing that our health system is fairly unique in that for a number of years, we hosted our own after-school program, and so we're very highly invested in the field. Our first initiative that I'd like to talk about actually was born out of that after-school program. Our staff had identified a number of years ago already that kids were really, there was a group of kids who were really in need of some additional supports beyond what we could provide as a staff. But maybe not as intensive as being referred for individual therapy. And being part of a health system, we were really fortunate that we had access to a behavioral health department. And so we were able to partner with a psychologist to create small group, an educational format that covered 8-week sessions with about 5 to 6 kids. And the psychologist really took tools that he used to teach his patients in his private practice and make them accessible to a group of students to help support them if they might be having some additional needs. So we implemented this in our program. We decided that this resource really needed to be shared. And so we piloted with a small group of after-school programs in our community. And now we have 29 after-school programs in Wisconsin who are implementing this support group format in their after-school programs. So we recommend that either a school counselor or a community-based mental health professional help to facilitate this group, but we provide the curriculum and the content so that the facilitator can really just work through the process. And there are some parent engagement aspects to this. So there's some video summaries and written summaries so that parents are aware of what the kids are learning in this small group session that happens over these 8 weeks. So we found some pretty amazing anecdotal response, kids who are practicing these skills and tools and coming back and sharing with the group leaders. We have monthly calls with the facilitators to hear how things are going, and that's supported by the psychologist. So it's been a really effective intervention, and our goal is to have 50 programs implementing this small group intervention in the next year. And yesterday, as a matter of fact, we had a summit where after school programs could learn about this intervention. We have 25 people registered to participate in that. So we're really seeing a lot of interest in the field. Looking for ways that after school programs can really continue and increase the support of kids and families. The second thing I would like to address, sorry, did you want to say something?
No, go ahead. Sorry.
That's okay. I had 2 things on my list. So the other thing I wanted to lift up is more relevant in the moment. We did a fall survey of after school programs, and we asked what were some areas that you would really like some continuing education or additional information. And so the field told us there were 3 topics that they really wanted to learn more about. One was diversity, equity, and inclusion and after-school programs. The other was trauma-informed care. And the last was mental health resources and how we can support kids in our program spaces. And so we, working with our partners in higher ed and within the health system, created 3 learning webinars, and then we hosted follow-up phone calls with providers based regionally. And we thought it would make sense to have providers in the same area of the state talk to each other to kind of create relationships and be able to share information and resources that they could all access because they were geographically similar. And so that was a well-received opportunity that we provided to the field, and had a number of people participate in those follow-up calls to share resources, ask questions, and really just have an opportunity to support each other, knowing the many challenges that we're addressing right now. So I did see something pop up in the chat about what was the name of the curriculum. So it's called Life Tools. And I did share a number of resource links. So I think those will be shared after the session. If you have any questions specifically about anything I talked about, you can always reach out. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Jen. I was just going to say what excellent resources and support you provide. So Kenny, you spoke earlier about the struggle some of your students are facing. What supports have your programs instituted to help? And what recommendations would you have for programs looking to do more in this area for their students?
Yeah, thank you. We have, just like many other out of school time programs across the nation, as soon as our stay-at-home order was lifted for the state, we were able to reopen, and we started serving families with parents who needed to continue working. So all the essential workforce. And so we were able to maintain that program and work to support students throughout that whole year of school when they were in and out of being remote and being in person. And so we were able to support the family through that way. And now we're continuing to help to support in deeper ways within the school system. And so we've built a much stronger relationship with the school principals and the teachers because of that experience that we all had together last year, where we were kind of the person on the ground helping the students while the teacher was kind of more remote. And then, and so we've maintained that. And I think that's a really important piece to it, because some of the supports that we've been able to provide came from being identified through the teachers and through sometimes the principals. We've also, on the flip side, reached out to them for additional support as well. So when we noticed that some of our students were really struggling with some relationships that at school, there was a little bit more, and I don't know if this was across the board, but we have noticed that there was some additional reports of bullying that we weren't seeing before the pandemic. And so we were able to reach out to the school and just kind of let them know, and they've been working to kind of make sure that those things were being addressed at the school. And then we also have been helping the students to process when they're with us in the after school space. I mentioned earlier that we have a mental health team. And so we have a mental health director who we've been able to call on whenever there was very severe issues being presented. But we've also invested in having our own social emotional learning support staff member for our after school programs. And so we're large enough that we were able to kind of spread that cost across our different program sites. But it's something that we found to be very valuable. So we have a clinical social worker who's on staff, and then we're able to have her go to different sites that might be struggling and meet with different students and meet with different families. And so we've provided that support. In addition, in addition to the supports we've provided for the students, we also have been linking our families with a lot of resources as they come out. So assistance with paying for the internet and Wi-Fi at their home, and being able to find resources for food, and if they're experiencing food insecurity and housing insecurity, and legal assistance as well. So trying to link them with the other organizations that we partner with. And then our staff as well. And I think, this was mentioned earlier, but our staff are also we are all experiencing the pandemic, right? And so helping to provide, we provided them all with a build your bounce training that they were able to kind of think about how they were bringing as best they can their themselves to the work, and being able to process difficult things in their own home life as well, so that they could kind of have opportunities to recognize their own and take care of their own mental health, as well as helping to support all of the students and families in our program. And then we just try to make sure that there's fun, right? Because I think that's something that's been lacking a lot for a lot of our students, as they were home for so long and on computers playing countless hours of video games. When they're in our program space, we try our best to bring some really amazing hands-on programs. We've got a cooking club, a Lego club, a woodworking club. And so we're starting to kind of make sure that they're really finding their passions in that way. And so I definitely encourage any after-school programs and summer camp programs, out of school time programs, to not forget that, right? Like, we need to definitely be providing all these supports, but also make sure that we're continuing to provide all that fun, which is what we do best in out of school time space. So those are a few things that we've been doing, and we've seen a lot of positive change for our students and families.
Kenny, thank you so much. And I completely agree. It's so important that we bring the joy to all the things that we are doing. When I was listening to you and Jen talk, one of the things that really came to mind was the importance of making sure that we are building relationships, and we're building those partnerships, whether it's through school districts, mental health providers, with the larger community. So it's just something I wanted to highlight a little bit more, because that really stuck out to me. Melissa, what are the things that are most important to you about your daughter's program?
I think addressing her emotional needs as well, along with the social needs. I know they're doing some curriculum that's looking at the emotional needs. And they're also doing a lot of fun things, as the other person I talked about, like the cooking clubs and stuff like that. And also the homework help. And that helps me out as a mom, because I work until 5:30. And when we get home, I know our homework is done. I know she's had the social time. I know they're addressing all of those needs with her. So again, that just helps me out as a mom, just making sure that she's being taken care of. And like I said, the pandemic was hard on everybody. It was hard on our working parents. It was hard on our kids. And that, to me, is my soft spot, because I want to make sure my kids are taken care of, not only, physically, but mentally. And sometimes they don't tell you. I just noticed certain things that she was not herself. And I do believe with the after school program, she's getting those needs taken care of. And I really appreciate that. And I am a big promoter of the after school program. So please, continue that. Us working parents, we really depend on that. And I feel like my kid is being taken care of.
Melissa, thank you for that.
Thank
Jody,
you.
are you seeing connections to the report you just released?
I am. And I want to thank all of our panelists. And I actually want to thank everybody that's part of this, this whole webinar, because the after school field just blows me away with the commitment to our children and our families. And the great news, as we just heard, is when we poll parents to ask them what they want, the after school field is delivering. So strong majorities of parents want their children to feel safe, supported, and have opportunities to build social and life skills. This was prior to the pandemic. Every indication we have is that this has even increased. And there's been an enormous focus on academic loss, but poll after poll of parents show they want their kids to have fun. They want them to be kids. They want them to be with caring adults. And that's a lot of what our programs do, not to mention some of the academic support like homework help. Parents trust after school programs. They see them as part of the solution. And as I said, we've been conducting surveys of parents all throughout the pandemic to really get a pulse of what's going on, and supporting students' overall well-being has been a consistent theme. And building off what's worked and what's been shared already, we see that programs are working with kids to teach them how to be supportive of their peers, especially during these times, how to recognize distress, how to show empathy. After-school programs address children's physical health, teaching about, as you heard, healthy eating, cooking, growing vegetables in a community garden. We've seen programs, and Marshfield Health Clinic is leading the way, that sponsor health and wellness events where they bring in local doctors, nurses, dentists to do checkups and screenings for a whole range of health issues. As you heard from Kenny, there are programs that are providing connections to healthcare professionals when the challenges the kids are facing are greater than the ones the staff is trained to deal with, which is really important to get that support. Recognizing when we can't do everything and when we can reach out to others to get that. And then, of course, almost a no-brainer, physical fitness is another area where after-school programs just shine, getting kids away from screens, out into the sunshine. Or, I don't know, I was at a program at Fairbanks, Alaska, where I wouldn't call it sunshine, I would call it warm, but the kids are out and running about and having a terrific time, playing games, exercising, interacting with each other, and moving around. So absolutely, every time, as our research shows, when we look to what parents really want for their kids, after-school programs are a big part of the solution.
Thank you for that, Jody. So Noah, what would your recommendations be to after-school programs who want to support their students' well-being?
Sorry, I thought I was unmuted and I started talking, but
No worries.
I think that there's a lot of factors that go into it. But really, I think what it just comes down to is just like giving it an effort. Like, because yes, whatever activity we might do, especially at my program, like it might not always be the funnest, but just being able to be with the staff or be with my friends and just being able to, do things and not always on my phone or not always on my Chromebook working on schoolwork. It's just a great thing to switch things up, like especially with the crazy activities like we do, especially with STEM and other things that, younger kids haven't been introduced to yet or they haven't done in school. And so it's a great thing to kind of introduce them, because I've done things like labs in science that I've done at the Boys and Girls Club before that. And it's just a great thing to, introduce the kids to something new and kind of switch things up so they're not always kind of just like robots and always doing the same thing over and over.
Great, thanks so much, Noah. So Kenny, you touched a little bit about this in terms of staff also having gone through the pandemic. In fact, all of us have. So I would love for you and Jen to just talk a little bit more about what advice you would give to programs to support their staff.
Yeah, definitely making time for that reflection. So helping to train their supervisors and being able to have some reflective supervision time and to carve that out for the staff members. And then just finding resources and different trainings that can help staff to kind of really process those behaviors without making it too long, right? Because I think that we don't want to add another thing to the to-do list, but we want to make sure that we're being really intentional about specifically carving out that time and encouraging staff members to talk to one another and find. We created a mini buddy system where they had somebody that they can go and talk to that wasn't their co-teacher or someone in their, sometimes not even someone in their same department. And so having that extra person to talk to is also really helpful. So there's a lot of that work, and then helping to find ways to make sure that we're bringing joy to our staff. And I think after school programs do this a lot as well, where you work with the staff to find what their passion is and encourage them to share that with the students. So we have, the reason why we have a woodworking program is because we have a staff member who was so excited about woodworking. He loved to do that, as a kid and as a young adult. And so now we encouraged him to bring that to the students. And sometimes when we're able to to bring the things that we're passionate about, that also has a healing aspect to it. And then our HR department and our mental health team as well is available to help our staff who are really, who also similarly, like we have been doing with our students, making sure that we have the resources available when things get really hard, so that we can also refer our staff to resources that can be helpful.
Great, thanks, Kenny. I love that buddy system idea, by the way. Jen?
Yeah, and I just want to reiterate some of what Kenny just highlighted. I think it's really important for programs to realize that self-care is an individual practice, but it also is a systems practice. And so I love that supportive supervision idea, that you have a buddy that you can talk to, and that your supervisor is taking time to sit down and debrief. I think so many programs are really struggling with staffing issues. And we're always busy, right? I mean, that's what after school is all about. We got a lot going on, but really being intentional about creating that space so that staff have an opportunity to feel supported and connect with other staff. They don't just show up and run their program and then leave, right? But they feel like they have some relationship and some connection. And interestingly, I believe it was Stanford that just did a study on why people leave their jobs, and you are 10 times more likely to leave your job because of a toxic environment than any other reason. And so really taking time to create the space and opportunity for support, I think, is huge. The second thing I want to lift up is we did another learning series. We kind of like learning series, I guess. We did another learning series through the health system, partnering with behavioral health, because we had heard from the field that people were just overwhelmed and didn't really know how to support themselves or their staff. And so we had 4 psychologists who offered some learning series with some really practical tools that you can implement for self-care and also within systems to help your staff. Those recordings will also be shared as part of the resources. So another learning opportunity. And actually the buddy system is one of the strategies that's in one of the sessions. So I love that Kenny mentioned that they're implementing that.
That's great. And Jen, I love the fact that you said, we always think of self-care as an individual thing, but the fact that you highlighted that it's also a systemic thing. That was really helpful. Thank you. So we've talked about how programs can help young people, but data from the America After 3 p.m. study shows we have big challenges in terms of families being able to access programs. For every child in a program, 3 are waiting to get in. Jody, can you comment on this?
Yeah, it's a staggering number. 25 million kids, and this was before the pandemic. Parents wanted programs for them, but they weren't available. And we have actually seen a decrease in the number of kids attending after-school programs because of an increase in barriers. So demand is through the roof, but parents have said double-digit increases in parents reporting that the cost of the programs, the lack of transportation, or lack of available programs in their area was the reason their child was not enrolled in an after-school program. And these barriers, it won't come as a surprise, hit low-income families the worst. And so as a result, as I said, 25 million kids. And this was prior to the pandemic. I can only imagine it's gone up. Parents really wanted these programs. So we need to do better. We need advocates. We need to do better to get more resources to the programs so that the work we're hearing about can continue and can reach more kids.
Absolutely. Kenny, are you seeing greater unmet demand or families who may be struggling to afford programs that give their kids the kinds of opportunities we've been discussing?
Yes, and as a result, we've been trying our best to meet that need. So when we started the pandemic, we had 3 locations, and now we have 6. So we're trying to. There's been more people, and sometimes schools have been reaching out to us because their former partner that they were working with has. We had one that the organization was disbanded, or the department was being run out of a larger organization. That department was closed, and so they needed additional support. And so I imagine that's happening in other areas around the country as well, that well-established after-school programs weren't able to weather the storm of the pandemic. And now those students are looking for another agency who can help to provide those services. So we've been trying our best to kind of answer that call. And then a lot of our families have been faced with a lot of barriers that we've been also trying our best to help to overcome. But for our summer camp, we are already going to be over enrolled for that, and so we're going to have a waiting list for our summer camp this year. And I think that's that speaks to a little bit of that unmet need, and we're trying to figure out other ways to partner with schools during the summer so we can provide additional services for some students. And it's definitely something that it's both being able to make sure that we've got this increased funding so that we can make sure that we can get the staff in and get these programs up and running so that we can create these safe after school and summer camp programs.
And so, Jody, from a policy perspective, what can be done?
Right. So we need to be increasing investments across the board. Federal dollars, state dollars, local dollars, philanthropic dollars. But there is some really good news, which is that the after school field was tremendous from the moment the pandemic hit, and it was noted and recognized by federal legislators. So as I hope you are all aware, and this is a mouthful, the American Rescue Plan Elementary and Secondary School Emergency Relief Funds, commonly referred to as COVID relief dollars, were targeted to after school and summer learning programs. So there was about $30 billion given partly to state education agencies and mostly to local education agencies. And within that money, after school and summer learning was explicitly mentioned as an allowable proven use of these dollars. So the great news is, as I said, right now, the money is there and we really can use it, whether it's to, hire people, professional development, hopefully expand resources, and to really make sure that people are aware of the valuable partners that after school programs are in our communities. And we're hearing some great examples. In fact, I am thrilled to announce, and if you are receiving COVID dollars, we're going to ask you to help us with this, that we have a map where you can click on and see some of the examples of where programs have tapped into these federal dollars, what they're doing with them. And I'm going to give a shout out to Woonsocket Education Department in Rhode Island. And they were able to offer free summer programs to more than 1,000 elementary, middle, and high school students across the district. And they partnered with community-based organizations like Boys and Girls Club, YMCA, and Rivers Edge Arts. The district was able to dramatically increase the number of students they served with the help of these federal COVID dollars, going from just with the elementary school students, an average of 63 students to 600 students last summer, 2021. So 63 to 600 in 2021. And the district is planning summer programs all the way through 2023. So we're really hoping to see more examples like this. But here's the bad news. When we surveyed after school providers this past fall, 2021, we found that only half of the providers in our survey were even contacted by their local school districts, and only 1 in 5, 20%, had actually received COVID funding. So, this is one of the first times, maybe the first time ever, there are true dollars out there. And we all know that if schools who have the control over these dollars partner with after school programs, it's going to be a much more comprehensive learning environment for our kids throughout the day. So for those of you that have dollars, please let us know what you're doing with them so we can broadcast the great news. For those of you that don't, www.helpkidsrecover.org has a lot of information, talking points, ideas to help access some of those local COVID dollars.
Thank you so much, Jody. That sounds like that money can be absolutely transformational. And so we all need to make sure that we get our hands on some of that so that we can continue to support our students across the country. Now it's time for Q&A, and we've got quite a few questions. If there are any journalists in the audience, please, if you put your questions in the chat, can you just identify yourselves? Excuse me as I just read these off a little bit. But this question is for Kenny and Noah. How is an after-school program different than school in terms of how a program supports the youth?
Do you want to go first, Noah, since you're experiencing it?
Sorry, I wasn't really sure. Yeah, you could go first if you want.
Okay. So, we really focus on those hands-on experiences, which happen in school as well. But we are really intentional about creating these fun projects and have an opportunity to lead them, sometimes without having as intensive a need of some of the kind of the tests and the things that are absolutely required that the school teacher does during the school day. We've got more freedom to do things a little bit differently. We also try, now that the numbers are going down a little bit more, we're starting to bring back our field trips. So for spring break, we, as an example, we're going to got an opportunity to go to the Lincoln Park Zoo here in Chicago, which is a free zoo. And we were able to bring some students there. And during spring break, our staff members did a wide variety of activities that were related to animal habitats and animals. And they got to go to the location and have that experience. And so we try to make sure that all of our activities have that really big, strong component. And then we're also able to build relationships differently in the out of school time space. So we're with these students sometimes year after year. We've got some students, our program is birth through age, through high school, really. And so we have some students who've been in our programs and some families who've been in our program since they were infants. And so we've been able to kind of walk with these families and stay with them through their transitions in their education experience a little bit differently than some of the schools are able to.
Great, thanks, Kenny. Noah?
I think it's also a lot more availability for one-on-one for after-school programs, at least for mine, for example, because we have 3 staffs that are around each time, usually depending on staffing, whatever, who's ever there. But with that, it's a lot easier for like a staff to pull me aside and we could talk about things, or I could ask a staff to go help me on homework, no matter the activity or no matter what we're doing at the moment. But within school, there's one teacher with 30 kids and it's, a lot difficult and a lot, let's say, more spread out and a lot like there's less support within that classroom. And that's the difference. That's what I think the difference is between like after school and school would be just like the more support and the more overall being, and less of just like you're at school and you're doing what you're supposed to be, and more you're here and you're supported and you're cared for and we want you to have fun.
That's great. Thanks so much, Noah. Next question is for Kenny, Jen, and Jody. Do after-school programs and their staff members have the resources and capacity to provide this kind of additional support? I think we touched a little bit about this around the dollars, but do you have anything else to add?
So I am going to, shoot it over to Jen, particularly for advice, but I think that the answer is it depends, and that we really should be looking for both opportunities for professional development for our staff in places where they may or may not have. And there's a whole host of things we're talking about, right? Like it's one thing to teach a cooking class and it's another thing to be a licensed social worker. But also, I think one of the things that professional development can be really important about is training our staff to know when there's others that can be helpful in the community. So again, we don't have to do it all ourselves. We just, a lot of times after school programs are terrific at connecting dots and services to kids and families that are in need. So I will turn it over to the experts at the local and state level.
Yeah, Jody, you said exactly what was on my mind, right? That really, I think training is essential for staff to feel empowered to manage more challenging or difficult situations or circumstances. And so looking for opportunities for your staff to learn and grow in their own skills and understand that we as adults are never there, right? We never arrive. It is always a learning journey. And so how do you provide those opportunities so that staff feel more comfortable and confident in their abilities to support youth who might have greater needs? And I also agree with the community resources and supports and connections. After school, from my experience, does a phenomenal job of connecting community resources to families and youth participating in the programs. And just knowing what's available. Part of what we have done with those regional calls that I had mentioned earlier is really just helping programs share with each other some of the resources and supports that they're utilizing. And because they are located in similar geographic regions, they can say, oh, I didn't even know that existed. And now we have another program that's able to access that resource. A number of programs connected outside of those facilitated phone calls to figure out how they can work around transportation barriers because multiple programs were experiencing, some of the same issues. So looking for ways that you can kind of create connections across after school programs in a community, and then with some of the supports and resources that exist in that community, I think can really help programs so that they don't have to do it all alone. It can feel overwhelming sometimes.
Great. This next question is for Kenny and Jen. And I think it touches a little bit upon the last one. How are your after school staff members doing?
It's a roller coaster for sure. I think every week is something new. I think I saw something in the chat earlier about staff turnover, and we've experienced that as well. Just a lot of since the fall, we've had quite a few staff members decide to kind of change course, do something a little bit differently. Some of our staff went to work individually with a family in-house, and so we had lost them for that kind of the big group dynamic. And we've been, we have certain weeks that are really exciting and rejuvenating, and we try our best to kind of bring that fun and bring that excitement to kind of keep those weeks there. But there's weeks where we're doing a lot more support and having opportunities to kind of reflect and talk through. Some of our staff members have also lost family members because of this pandemic, and so there's been a lot of support that we've been providing just in both with their work life as well as with their personal life.
Jen?
Yeah, I'm not currently in an after school program, but I work, with providers in the field quite frequently, and echo really what Kenny has said, that it's really, there's ups and downs. And one of the psychologists who presented in our caregiver compassion fatigue series that I had mentioned really talked about how, when there's a significant event, there's usually this trajectory that we follow, that there's a period of recovery, and we really have not gotten to that point because it just keeps ebbing and flowing and ebbing and flowing. And so we have to really work on creating sandbar moments, as she called them, that we are like in an ocean just treading water and we don't really know what's around the next corner. And so how do we create sandbars so that people can just kind of ground for a moment and restore, right? So that they can kind of get swept back away and tread water for a little while. And so, thinking about how do you do that in your program spaces. When I was working a program, one of the things that we did do a couple of times a week is we would arrive 15 minutes early and we would do a mindfulness practice together as a whole staff. And that just became part of our routine. It was, relationship building for the staff. It was also a self-care practice. And it became systematized, right? It was just part of what we did. And so we kind of tried to tick all those boxes to help support each other. And that was pre-pandemic. So I would imagine in the midst of what we're dealing with now, implementing activities and strategies like that would be even more important and even more impactful.
Jen, I completely agree. I do a lot of things around mindfulness practice when we're talking as a team, when we go in with students. I'm like, do it before you start class, like just give a little break. And it actually changes the entire energy and the dynamics. I'm glad that you brought that up. So are after school programs prioritizing physical activity and sports? And if so, how so?
I'm going to jump in and start with the report, which shows that I don't know that the wording was prioritization, but that 85% of parents reported that their after school programs were providing children with opportunities to be physically active. And this is up 9 points from when we asked the same question of parents in 2014. So I think the answer is it's a pretty important, if not essential, component of almost all the after school programs out there. I mean, almost 90% when you look at our report, and this is parents reporting it. And then I would say, whether it's prioritized probably depends on each program, because one of the beautiful things about after school is it's really tailored to local communities, local community resources, and also the needs of the students. So I said, it looks like the person asking this question is here in Washington, DC. There's 2 programs here that use that actually there's multiple programs here, there's more than 2 that use sports as a hook to get kids into after school. So if you look at a program like America's Scores, the DC Scores version, they use soccer. They also do amazing spoken word with their kids. There's another program called After School All Stars, and they very much use sports as one of the ways to get kids involved in the program. And then a third program that I'm thinking about is the Washington Tennis and Education Foundation, and that's just off the top of my head. So I would say the answer is yes, but how it's done and whether, really depends on the community and whether it's being used as a hook or whether it's being used. I've also seen programs where kids do a walking club. They don't want to play sports, but getting them physically active. So it's really tuned to how do you make this fun and create a spark for the kids where they start, and I think ideally developing a love of being active.
Great, thanks so much, Jody. Anyone else wanted to add anything to that?
I'll jump in, and I definitely agree with Jody. I've been in a lot of different after school programs, and it's definitely tailored to the after school program that you're in. But especially with my after school program and other Boys and Girls Club programs that I've seen in Utah, at least, sports is like a really big thing. Like just bringing in my friends, because I've brought in a lot of friends to the Boys and Girls Club, and like bringing them in, that's like one of the first things that I get them hooked on is we'll go play football. And then especially my program, we do so much sports, especially with a lot of the older kids. We have a lot more say and we talk to the staff a lot more. And so when we're coming up with these ideas to start and design activities that we're going to do, it's kind of just a big thing, and it's kind of just voting within my program. So it's necessarily what the kids want, and it wasn't decided for the kids because we do have multiple choices. But yes, I do think that my program, it is definitely a priority, and we do. So my program director is actually, he's a part of the Army. And so every once in a while we'll do Army push-ups with him, or we'll do a couple Army drills, like fun little kiddie version of Army drills. And it's just awesome and a good way to get active.
Sounds like a blast, Noah. So next question, do you see communities coming together to help students in all the ways that are needed? And I guess, Kenny, I'll go to you for that, and then we can maybe go to Jen after.
I think, yes. Well, it definitely takes some effort on everyone's part to make those connections, because everyone has a million things going on, right? And so making sure to have that time to keep those relationships strong that were sometimes established during, as I mentioned earlier, like the additional contacts that we made at the school level. We've worked intentionally to keep those relationships strong. And then it's also taking a little more effort because there's been some changes. So some organizations that we have partnered with in the past are no longer providing services or no longer around. And so it's a matter of also finding new partners as well. And so we've we've been leveraging our connections and our partnership organizations to help us to find new organizations when we need to. So I think that there's definitely this this understanding that we need to work together. At least in Chicago, I've seen this kind of collaborative effort happening, but it does take some more work too.
Thanks, Kenny. Jen?
Yeah, I agree. From what I'm seeing, communities are really making efforts to come together and try and support each other. And there is a new landscape to navigate for sure, where many resources have wait lists, right? After school programs have wait lists as well as other community supports. And so how do you navigate the new terrain if, some of these resources are not as available? So being creative and how you're providing some maybe new supports or interventions within communities to meet the need, because the need clearly is out there and exists. So what I'm seeing is that communities are doing what they can to try and support, youth and families to the best of their ability.
Great, thanks, Jen. Jody, do you have anything additional to add just from a national context?
Well, I think that what we have seen during the pandemic that's been really exciting is exactly what you're hearing, which is that in many places where schools already had relationships with after-school programs, they are stronger. And that's where we're seeing some of the best examples come from. And we're also seeing some communities where the relationships weren't particularly strong and they've grown stronger. And I truly hope, and it's one of the things we're trying to do with this map and showcasing stories, that this is a new norm and that we can move towards an environment where there's real recognition that kids are learning all the time, and that what happens outside of school is every bit as important as what happens inside school, and that if communities come together, we can use that to really target services and supports and opportunities to kids in a very individualized way.
I love that, Jody. So we have time for one more question. I cannot believe that our time is winding down. This has been such a rich discussion. So thank you all for being here and taking the time and listening and asking questions and engaging with us. So this question is for Kenny and Jen. Are the financial pressures associated with inflation affecting your program and the families they serve or the field in general?
I have to say yes. I think that in some ways for our staff members too, that I think trying to that could have something to do with some of the staff members feeling like they need to leave as well. And so we've been working as hard as we can to help to meet the increased needs and increase salaries as best we can. And that our families have certainly, we've had a few families who've reached out in the last few months asking for more, just expressing an increased need for assistance. And so I think that in the months ahead, we'll see a lot more, but I think that we're starting to feel the pain for that too.
Great, thanks, Kenny. Jen?
Yeah, I would say I think we've seen access to resources for families has been increased. There's been an increased need throughout the pandemic in general. And so I think, increased prices don't really help a problem that's already existing. And, the number of families who are really seeking some additional resources and supports is definitely increased, I think, over the last couple of years, just from what I am seeing and hearing from the field. I also think, thinking about after school programs and how it might be impacting staff, I think there is some potential for that as well. And knowing that we aren't always able to pay staff what we know their true value is does not help when we're dealing with some of these additional financial strains, right? So I would say, yes, I think there's probably some impacts.
And before we close out, Jody, do you have any last words?
Well, I'm going to share with everyone what I just put in the chat, which is that I am humbled and honored to be part of this panel. I am blown away by my fellow panelists, and I am humbled and honored to be part of this field. So thank you all for what you're doing, and thank you so much. It is, while it's concerning, it is so refreshing to be talking about holistic needs and to have an entire panel where we're really focusing on much more than academics when we talk about our kids.
Thank you so much, Jody. Thank you, everyone. Kenny, Jen, Noah, Melissa, your thoughts have been invaluable. I really appreciate everyone being here. Take care. Bye.